today again, Sister Gopi, as always. So if you can please highlight Sister Anu, thank you. And I'm sure she's joined. Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. And before I give it to you, again, a poem for you. The audience know you quite well. Sister Gopi, well, she doesn't need any introduction, a perfect blend of the East and West. But Sister Gopi only actually inspired me to be a poet. So I'll just speak a few lines, around 10 to 12 sentences. So I'll start. Sister Gopi's talks are indeed so effective, full of precision, and helping the wandering minds to make an accurate decision. It is under her able guidance and supervision that many are able to have a proper vision. She says, let's move into the essence from the wide expansion, because that's what is written in our destiny as a provision. And we'll be hearing that soon. Let go and let God come into our lives with full permission, so that there remains no doubt nor any suspicion. Life now flows freely with every step as a concession, with virtues and powers coming naturally as an acquisition. And finally, I have now no regrets nor any false accusation, since the Supreme is present in my every disposition. And I am now seated in the most sound and stable position, despite Maya playing around, trying to create a lot of opposition. So thank you so much for joining once again. And the stage is all yours. And over to you. Thank you.
Om Shanti to everyone and greetings of peace. It feels like the whole world is gathered here. It's quite something. So pleasure to be with you. And it seems to be, first of all, can you hear me okay? Is the sound okay?
Yeah, it's perfect. It's perfect.
Yeah, perfect.
So it seems to be quite an oxymoron to be giving a talk on staying in essence. I thought, well, I'll just say 2 words and then Om Shanti, stop the talk. And as I was spending some time reflecting on the topic, the word essence is something that is very close to my heart. And when you think about it in terms of even the world that we're in today, when they sell you the very best things or the most expensive things, they're the essence of something. Just a few days ago, I was watching how a very specific kind of purple dye was being made out of some shells from the sea. And it's so expensive that a small bottle of this dye is $3,000. And it takes so long to extract the color out of it. And so there's a sense of, and then you've got the whole essential oils business, where they extract the pure essence in a concentrated form. And then those oils, have to be applied, either diluted or neat, but they're expensive. And, I feel in our lives, when we're drawing out the essence of something, and especially of ourselves, it is a painstaking process. It's not just a finger's click. Anything, even in the world, when you're taking the essence out of something, it's a very careful process. And there's lots of different steps. Some things extracted, some things cut out, some things boiled, some things, heated up. The aloe is being removed. There's so many steps in there. And so for me, being in essence is the product of a number of different things we have to do in our lives. And I guess for me, one of the first places it begins is the cultivation of ground zero inside. If I'm going to take myself apart, I'm going to, start an extraction process, then I need to be at a certain level of peace inside myself. Because I'm literally extracting value out of what I am and who I am. And sometimes in our expansion, we can talk so much about something, but how much of it has value? And how much of it is just a noise, a meaningless noise. And of course, when they at other times talk about being in essence, it's like get to the point. Let what you're thinking and speaking be meaningful. So, I was trying to reflect on this subject through a real life situation. And here we are, where we're sitting in a world, so many changes are happening. The media's, kind of thrown us and colonized us into helplessness and a feeling of hopelessness sometimes, because there's so many bombarded with so much information, either through social media, through the television. And in one sense, it can lead to a sense of paralysis. Well, where do we go and what do we do? And yet, people in this world, when you look and you think, well, where do I find meaning? Where do I find essence? Where do I find value from? And I feel very strongly that we need to be able to see the truth of suffering, I call it suffering, because the conundrum of the dynamics of what's happening in the world today, it's crazy. Some of it's nonsense. It's just people are just acting out, playing out, no meaning, nothing to it. And it just sounds like it's crazy, either on the world stage, political stage. And I guess when you're feeling emotive about it, it's very hard to see any meaning, see any point in this world. And there is something about being in this moment now and being able to observe it without bias, without prejudice, and no fault finding. So to see what is happening as it is for what it is. And so not flee it, but see it. And I feel this practice is very important. I know that my own personal meditation practice grounds me into being an observer, a peaceful observer of what's happening in my mind right now, what's happening around me right now. And as I can, from that position of being a peaceful observer, I can start an extraction process. Now, sometimes when there is suffering around us, and especially if we're empaths and, we can take on the, suffering of the world, and that's completely meaningless, right? It's no point taking on the burden and the suffering of the world because it's going to get you nowhere. But there's something about finding a sweet spot in this whole thing where I don't experience emotional distress, empathic distress, or I don't feel alienated. And for me, that sweet spot is learning how to be a peaceful observer. And I had a very recent experience of nursing my father through quite a severe bout of ill health. And I was with him in hospital virtually daily for 2 months, sometimes up to 9 hours a day. Very complex condition, 2 chest infections, COVID, heart attack, 2 stomach infections, and he still lives to tell the tale. And he's been in hospital for 4 months. He's now out of hospital, thankfully. But when I was called in, I happened to be in South Africa, and I got a help call, a distress call from my family, one of my family members. And they said, we're not coping with Dad being in hospital. Please come back. And I came back and I found my mother, all my family came down with COVID. So nobody could be with him. He's disabled, so he can't move his arms much. So, and he was on the verge of going, or so my brother told me. And so it was we had no idea what's going on. There's a lot of emotion around it. He's in a ward, he's in the respiratory ward, and there's people around him that are dying, coughing away, but there must have been 4 deaths in 1 week in that ward. And when I arrived, maybe it's because of my years of meditation practice, I could just kick into that gear of being a peaceful observer. And I just sensed, amidst all the drama of what was going on, I felt him as a soul, and I felt that this soul wasn't ready to go yet. Yes, he was in the middle of a boxing ring, having the living daylights punched out of him with all these infections, one after the other. But there was still a lot of oomph and chi and will left in the soul. So I remember just reflecting and thinking, okay, this is the reality we're facing then. And so I had to really separate what I instinctively felt from the dramas of the reactions of things happening around it. And then the second thing was to name the reality. And I think that's really important, because until you can name that reality, you can't disidentify from suffering. You'll take on board people's stuff and people's spin, because everybody has a different, what makes you suffer doesn't make me suffer. And so what happens is when people's dramas play out, you're taking on, my brother was very, very scared. So, he dramatized the whole thing. And of course, Dad was in a bad shape, but I didn't think he was on his way out just yet. So there's something about finding your clarity, and which is naming the reality that you're in. That's the first level of essence that needs to happen in a dramatic situation. And yes, I had to face him with that. I had to talk to him. And a couple of days in, I said to him, Dad, how are you feeling? And he goes, oh, this is just too much. And I don't want to be a burden on your mother. I don't want to be a burden on this. I said, okay, Dad, let's just stop all that talk, because that's not the real issue here. The issue here is you're in the middle of a boxing ring having a really hard time, and you're being punched really hard and you feel you can't take it. That's the issue. Now, the question is here, are you just going to give up and lie down flat on the floor and go? You're still mobile. You can still walk. You can still move. You can still talk to me a little bit. You can still breathe. Or are you going to walk yourself out of this? And of course, whenever your part on this earth ends, it ends. But how you choose to exit is up to you. And so this is what I'm naming for you. Because until you make a decision, nothing's going to work for you. And by the way, he had moved 8 different wards in this hospital. I mean, we knew the hospital staff really well by the end of the stay. So it was very interesting. A few days later, when I came back, on the one level, it might sound like an insensitive or cruel thing to do, to name a reality. But on the other sense, it was the first step to healing, was to actually go right into the heart of what the essence of this matter and issue was. And he was then left to make a decision. And he made a decision to walk himself out of his lot, so to speak. And within a few days and a week, we started to see the markers get better. We started to see him come off oxygen. We started to see improvement in the condition. Yes, he had COVID after that, but we started to see significant improvement. And I very much realized how important to be able to stay real is in this kind of situation, to hold to the essence of things. And it made me very clear about my part in this whole drama that was playing out in front of me, that I had two jobs. I had to help keep his mental state stable, and I had to just keep him mobile, just keep him walking. And so I said to him, so how do you want to measure your progress? And he said to me, well, let's keep a diary and let's see how many steps I take every day. So the second step, and this is quite important, is that you have to keep things circulating. And so we started keeping a diary and tracking 100 steps one day, 150 the next, 200 the next, 300. By the end of the week, he was on to 700 steps a day. And as he started to track that minute progress, little, essence is also little. It's not a lot. So it's about essence, little by little by little by little, the drop by drop by drop by drop eventually makes a lake. And as that started to happen, it was like his whole mindset changed about what he could do and what he could achieve. Yes, there were days when he just didn't want to exercise, when he didn't want to get off that bed and he didn't want to do anything. And it's okay. We call them the slack days. But, I remember I'd be walking in and I'd be saying, Dad, have you done your exercise? And he'd just look at me. And I knew he hadn't. And it didn't look like he had any incentive to. And in those moments, I couldn't get frustrated. I would then just have to make light of it. And that's one of the other things about staying essenceful, is you learn to stay light. And I would then have to find a different way to engage him in exercise. And so one day I just sat quietly, and as I'm listening to him making all these excuses about why he can't exercise, I said to him, Dad, do you like some music? What music do you like? Goes back to the Bee Gees, goes back to the, way, way back. So we're putting on all this music. And then I say, come on, Dad, let's get up. Let's go for a walk. So, the nurses pop their head in round the door and we're kind of walking and marching up and down to Boney M. And, he's starting to enjoy his exercise. And then mentally, we used to, do 10 appreciations a day, 10 things he appreciated about his day today. And what I noticed is when you start focusing on the small things that can make the biggest impact, the little things, and they have to be little things that are effective. So it's not just, the physiotherapist would come in and she would prescribe a very specific set of exercises for his condition. So you have to find the little things that are very specific to you, that make you move, give you oomph, make something work. And you just have to keep repeating them. And it was interesting, this whole combination of physical and mental movement and circulation for him eventually brought him out of hospital. He is now fully clear, he's mobile, and it's almost as if nothing happened. And I'm realizing how important it is to be able to look for what's real in something and work with what's real. And my own experience from it was that I started to appreciate the efforts of everybody in that hospital. It was quite incredible. And what that opens up is it opens up a sense of hope. And, sometimes we think of hope at a big level and expectancy of something big. We hope something's big going to happen. But it's not a state of expectation. It's a state of seeing good and being good and feeling good. And in that state, the little things suddenly become so visible, so clear. Hope lies in the goodness of the small things that are around us, not the big things. So I deeply valued that opportunity to be able to stay essence-full. And yes, there were days I would come home, I would be exhausted. There would be like 9 hours a day at hospital, and you've got people dying, and it's a heavy atmosphere sometimes. I'd have a salt shower, and I'd sit down and have an hour's meditation. And the first 10 minutes, I would just breathe. Because one of the other factors I find that needs to be cultivated to be able to stay essence-full and focused is balance. And breathing regulates the mind. It regulates the mind-body balance. And that's really important, because otherwise you just carry traumas and dramas in your head, and you just ruminate and reminisce. They just repeat in your head, and you carry that stuff to bed. And when you breathe everything out, you're then left with what's yours inside, that eventually you have to come down to. And extraction, it does require observing your thought patterns over a period of time, because we don't necessarily filter what we think. We tend to believe everything we think. And that's not a healthy thing. And I understand somewhere earlier somebody said that first power is tolerance. I would say that preceding tolerance would be the power to discern. Because if you have the power to discern, and that's cultivated through peaceful observation, then you know what to tolerate. You throw out the rubbish and you keep what's good. And then tolerance doesn't feel like a suppression. But it's you love what is good, you nurture what is good, you focus on what is good, and you grow what is good. So discernment is a very important power. It keeps all the other powers with us. It activates all the other powers. It was something I often heard Daddy Janki talk about, and it took me a while to get my head around it, but it made a lot of sense. So peaceful observation, discernment, and extracting the waste, the rubbish out of my thinking. It's literally just going, no, we're not going down there anymore. That's not my property. Now, we are human beings that have feelings. And a big part of our journey is somewhat irrational. As much as logic we will apply, when our feelings and we get emotional surges, we become irrational. And I think one of the things is, when I think about essence, I also think of the word taste. And that our feelings, in Hindi we use the word ras. You're extracting mango juice, the juice out of a mango, you extract its taste in the form of liquid out of something. And I think that what meditation helps to do is to begin extracting the juice of the soul. You begin to taste the quality of what you are and who you are as a being of peace, as a being of love, as a being of wisdom, as a being of power. And that consistent practice of coming back to your essence as a point of consciousness, pure consciousness, that whole practice keeps your feelings clean. And I feel that's very, very important in being able to stay essenceful in expression as well. Because if the practice of detaching and concentrating my energy isn't there again and again, I will be ruled by my default patterns and habits. I will be ruled by my sensory perceptions and experiences. And this is what we call then the subtle ego. So, I will find myself reacting to world events, opinionating about this, and generating a whole load of noise that's actually just taking me around in circles. But I'm never getting to the point of my own life, the point in a situation, and so things don't move forward in my life. So, sometimes we have instincts about things. When I say in our lives, some people operate with detail, they need the facts of everything. Other people get a sense, an instinct, and they trust that instinct. So the detail is not necessary at that point. But an investigation of that instinct is important. Because sometimes you can have an instinct and then make an assumption about how something should be. And you can get into trouble. Because how you see something should be might not be how somebody else sees it. And so stay with the instinct and then clarify it. Consult, communicate, explore, create a pathway of clarity for this instinct so that it becomes clear how to act in this moment now. But the mistake that often is made is people assume, oh, I've had this feeling, so I assume this is what's going to happen. No, because there's a lot of people that don't know what's going on inside your head until you're able to open your mouth and communicate what you're feeling, what you're seeing in a suggestive way, in an explorative way, in a consultative manner that allows us to, find solutions, co-create solutions, instead of imposing our ideas on others. So, staying in essence, getting to the truth of the moment, seeing the truth in suffering, becoming a peaceful observer, extracting what is essential out of what I'm thinking in this moment, nurturing what is good, discerning and nurturing what is good, growing what is good, and keeping my feelings clean. And really appreciating the small, small steps. In each one of us, we've had enormous lives, all of us. And how much of your life do you take for granted? And how much of your life have you fully, I wouldn't say appreciated, but acknowledged? The small effort that is made in small things. And when you acknowledge that effort, you experience sweetness inside, sweetness towards your own self. And that's when you can stay content. Discontent people never see the small things. So in the sense that they're always wanting something bigger, but they can't see what they already have around them. And so when what you have is being discounted all the time and not acknowledged, then of course it will keep giving rise to more distress. So it's just about often acknowledging, and this is what a peaceful observer does. It acknowledges the effort this tiny little soul makes every day just to stay alive. Now, I want to just stop there for a moment. And I want to just take a minute and invite you inside. Feel your feet on the floor, this body in your chair. And breathe. And enjoy your breath. Breathe in, hold it for a couple of seconds, and breathe out slowly. And as you breathe out, all the muscles in your body relax. And there's a sweetness in this moment now. Acknowledge the body. Acknowledge the effort that you make. And now for a few moments, just take a step behind these eyes, the mask of this face. And feel yourself behind these eyes. A very soft, subtle being that is light. That's very sweet. And allow yourself to be in this essence for a while. And now slowly open your eyes and look out in front of you. And allow that sweetness to flow through your eyes. One last thing I'll share before I stop is that when we come back to living a life of essence, it doesn't mean doing the bare minimum to get by. That's living a miserly life. It means living a life of principle. And so as an individual, I have to be very clear about my principles. Because if I am not clear about the principles that I choose to live my life with, then on what basis am I making decisions? And on what basis am I thinking? Right? So whatever you value, you will give that thought, time, and energy. And when you have a certain set of principles, you can filter how much time and energy you give to something at a physical level. Otherwise, even the physical stuff, it's eternal. You can, I mean, there's a doctor for every single part of this body. I mean, and there's even sub-doctors for parts of this body. So it's eternal. You can think about things as much as you want. There's no end to it. But what's the filter? Where do you stop when you put a principle in place? I'll give you an example. I remember traveling. This is very simple, but it illustrates something. That I remember traveling a lot, and I was traveling to one of our centers in Eastern Europe. And I'm a frequent flyer, and I had to take some things for the center there that they couldn't afford. So I was taking them from London, and I packed a third suitcase, even though I was only allowed two. And I looked up online, and I have a principle: greater success through less expenditure. So I like to use everything in a worthwhile way and make sure I get the maximum out of something. So I looked up online and I saw that getting a third bag would cost like £80. And I thought, well, the contents of this isn't even that. So, and then I thought, well, if I get to the other side and we have to buy all this, it will take time and money and energy. So I was thinking, oh, what do I do? And you're in this kind of, shall I take it? Shall I not take it? Am I allowed it? Shall I pay for it? And then I just went, okay, what's my principle? What's my guiding principle here? My guiding principle is greater success through less expenditure. And I've packed this suitcase because it's not for me, it's for them. And if it's going to be useful for them, and if this is really necessary for them, it'll get through. So I decided to take it to the airport with me anyway. And because I'm an elite frequent flyer, I get to check in at business. So I checked in at business class. And on that day, so happened that the conveyor belt was broken. So the person at business class check-in was so frazzled, and he was so trying to rush everything through, that even when I told him, excuse me, I have a third case, he goes, don't worry about it, ma'am, just put it on here and please go. You need to go. We need to clear all this. There's lots of customers. So all 3 bags got checked in. I wasn't dishonest about it. I told him it was 3 bags and he just took it in. And I didn't pay for it. And I realized that when you stay true to your principles, because I'd made a decision, I wasn't going to put my mind through any more trauma over a trivial thing. I thought, okay, I'm going to keep this bag packed. We're going to get to the airport. If it goes, it goes. If it doesn't go, it doesn't go. And that was it. And as I saved my mental space from overthinking about triviality, I saved my energy. I felt happy. I'd made a principled decision. But then I was absolutely delighted when I got to the airport. And I found proof that when you follow your principles, even the universe will cooperate with you, especially if what you're doing is for the benefit of others. Aristotle was once asked, what is the essence of life? And his reply was to be good and to serve others. And so much of our lives become beneficial. Our decisions become benevolent when we have guiding principles we live on. So we don't cross lines that complicate us. You do things to please people, for example. You make decisions because, they're just convenient for you. But your life is for the greater good. Every part of your being is for the greater good. And to be good is to be essenceful. To be essenceful is to be pure and good in everything. And so, you know, for some of us, in some areas of our lives, our principles are clear. Principles related to money, principles related to things, but elevated principles. What about principles in relation to relationships? I have a principle of respect. And that principle for me that I've translated it into is that I will relate to your speciality. No matter how you choose to express with me in this moment, I will relate to what is good inside you. And that's my personal principle. And one of the beautiful things about living in your principles is that you don't mind anymore what anybody else thinks, because you're never doing it because of what someone thinks. You live your life because it's who you are. You live your life like the sun. You just keep shining. You keep behaving in that way, thinking in that way, doing in that way, because that's what you are. And that's not conditional based on someone's response. It's not a negotiation. It's not a transaction. You're not counting anything. You know, the sun will never say to a cloud, why are you in front of me? The sun will never tell you, why are you closing the curtains on a hot day? It will do its job. And then it will go to sleep when it has to. And I feel that's what principles do. That's what, for me, helps me stay very essenceful and save my mental energy, is being very clear about my guiding principles inside. So I want to stop there.
Wow, amazing. Thank you so much. I can see a few questions in the chat box. Can I take them in the next 5 minutes or so?
Sure.
Is that okay? Yeah. Okay. So speaking of principles, someone is asking that I am new to Brahma Kumaris and I've heard a lot of BK principles. So can sister guide me about what BK principles are there which I have to follow?
Well, all of the principles in the BK world, they are designed to cultivate the goodness of our purity. Goodness is linked to purity, the essence of our being. You know, pure-hearted, pure in our thinking, purity in our vision, purity in our attitude. And so the principles in our BK life encourage purity of thought, mind, heart, spirit. That's the first thing to understand. The second thing is that there are different principles that encourage this. So principles in practices, I would say. So it would be the regular practice of meditation, right? That helps us cultivate the state of detached observation, peace, experience our inner peace. The regular practice of spiritual study that allows us to nourish our mind and nourish our thoughts with higher thinking. And that keeps the essence of our thinking elevated, above the rubbish of playing chess with materialism. You know, the practice of a pure diet, eating food that is sattvic, helps to regulate the mind-body connection as well. So you've got fundamentally just 3 basic practices in place that support purity. And of course, one of the things that within the BK study we understand is this term called Srimat. And Shri means elevated and Mat means direction. And this is what we receive from the divine. So there's a level of principles that help us to be good and help us to sustain our goodness in everything. And then there's Srimat that helps us to become elevated. And that is beyond good. Elevated is a stage where there is so much benefit that comes out of just one action and one thought. that you are like a walking, talking mobile service station. You know, when they put Wi-Fi routers, they put them up very high so the signal goes everywhere. So the more elevated you become, the more your vibrations and your goodness and the aura of your goodness reaches so many souls. And one of the first Srimats that we receive is to keep an elevated consciousness. And it's very, very simple. Consider yourself to be a soul. And remember the Supreme. And if you can just do that in everything you're doing, just that one thing, you will be flooding your activity and your attitude and your vision with the energy of your purity. And, every act of yours will be worthy of worship. So you'll smile and people will say, oh, that's an angel. You'll cook and people will be inspired. You'll be walking and talking and people go, oh, who's that? And it's not about, attracting attention. It's just that the very nature of doing things in a soul awareness and in the remembrance of God just brings beauty to everything you do. And it just lifts everything out of the ordinary. And that's what makes it so special. Is that okay?
It's amazing. The way you got it out was beautiful. It doesn't sound very heavy for the beginners who are into this part of Brahma Kumaris. So it's great. It's a great answer. And a last question in the interest of time was, you mentioned about instincts and assumptions. So the person is asking, how do I know that it is not my assumption, it's my instinct? I think you covered that, but if you want to highlight that again.
An instinct is a feeling, like a sense of some kind, whereas assumption means you're giving it a form. Like you've already thought how something should be. So you've assumed something, oh, well, it should look like this. And you've got, and you run over yourself. When you make assumptions about things, you've kind of assumed something and you've missed out some details on the way, or you haven't asked somebody, or haven't done something. So it's fine to have a sense, but then put that sense out into the open and allow people to dissect it.
Fantastic. Very well said. So don't give it a form. Let people dissect it and give it a form. Fantastic. Yeah. So now I'll request our seniors. We have with us Dr. Ashok Mehta and Sister Claudia. So both of you to please. So we'll start with Dr. Mehta first to propose the vote of thanks. Yeah. Over to you.
Om Shanti Gopi Ben. Thank you very much.
Shanti Ashok.
Most beautiful thinking and most beautiful thoughts today of elevated consciousness. Simple things. Like I went to the medical school, and before that I was always touched by the Gandhian thought that what you said, the guiding principles at that point early in my life was anasakt karma yoga. You do the maximum, the best, without expecting too much out of it. And I lived my life on those principles of, I think the elevated consciousness you have said is so beautiful. And that attracted me to the Brahma Kumaris and what you have spelled out so beautifully. I always liked the essence of Dadi. Said, "Kam kharch bala nashin," spend minimum and still enjoy it. And I think this is what we have always seen, experienced, and more than that is we have lived our life following those principles. I think whatever you have said is a very, very beautiful things. Simpler we make our life, the better it is, instead of making it complicated. And once you have drawn your line and you have, what you said, follow the Srimad, as much as you can, sometimes we may find ourselves deficient in following, but even then, our essence of our life is to follow the Srimad. I think what you brought out is so beautiful. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
I think
Shubham.
what impresses me the maximum is the simple way, and in multiple ways, in broader ways, you bring out the truth. I think the beauty of presentation and beauty of expressing yourself and beauty of bringing out the best in all of us. Thank you very much. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti. Gopi, it's very nice to have you with us again, and it's always a pleasure. So it was very nice to hear you speaking about this essence and bring us the awareness of being a detached observer, and then see what is it needed for that, and extract whatever is rubbish and just have that very essence of whatever we're going through. And it's very nice to hear you talking about the experience you have with your father, because for many of us, we are going through those experiences. So we kind of feel in the same shoes that you have gone through. We can feel that our life as well. So, but it's another very important point that I quite like it also when you talk about is to be what is important for my life, to have that principle that guide us, because those principles in all those times, even when we are going through anything, like you had with your father, the principles also bring you to that essence, what to do and not to do. So thank you very much. It was a very nice to hear you today. Thank you.
Yeah, lovely to see you both.
Thank you so much, both of you. And before we go into the closing meditation, Anu sister, be ready with the photograph thing, and I will just do the announcements briefly. So if you want to go into the depths of this value of being essential, particularly in the month of January, as we have chosen solitude and essential as the two values for this month. So we'll be ending as January comes to a close. So within 12 hours from now, so India time, 9 o'clock in the morning, and for West Coast, 7:30 p.m. Please feel free to join this silence retreat for 2 hours on being essential. And you could go into the depths of the peace and silence, which we're all speaking about. Continuing further with our values, live series talks. The next talk is on episode 58 on divinity, Divyata in Hindi. We have our very senior Rajogi, very divine sister Asha Devi, who's the director of Om Shanti Retreat Center, on Saturday, 4th Feb. And as always, the workshop following that would be, we'll be having first time with us another divine soul speaking on divinity, Sister Radha, who is from Rome, Italy. She's the center coordinator there, and that will be the week following after that, 11th February. And that's the next. And this is our elusive calendar of the February month. For BKs, again, February is a very important month. We celebrate the grand festival of Mahashivratri. So we'll be covering two values, divinity and truthfulness, in the coming month. We'll be doing the announcements shortly about our speakers for the workshop and the talks later. And please feel free to give your feedbacks and your comments on these emails. We'll be sending you the review materials soon in a couple of days of all whatever Sister Gopi has spoken. We'll be making a small synopsis and send it to you as well. These are our websites, vihasa.in and vancouver.brahmakumaris.ca. And many people keep asking, can we look at the recordings? Yes, of course you can. So the workshops are on omshanti.tk/workshops. And the episodes of the talks by the senior Rajyogis are on omshanti.tk/playlist and /English. And if you can write down the other languages, they'll come automatically on that. So I'll just stop sharing the screen and over to Sister Anu for the quick photograph, and then we'll go in the meditation mode.
As we always want to have this moment with us, so everyone who wants to be in the photograph with Sister Gopi, please stop your video. I'll take another few seconds. I got it. Thank you, Sister Gopi. It was really wonderful. But yes, now we'll go for meditation as well.
So, will it be a commentary or drishti, whatever you're comfortable with?
Just a few words, and then we can have silence.
Sure. Thanks.
So once again, just allow yourself to step inside. Acknowledge the presence inside. A soul that is full with treasures and richness. A soul that is filled with the gold of goodness. As I let myself become soul conscious, I marvel at the beauty of creation. And it reminds me of how beautiful the Creator must be. So my thoughts turn to the Supreme. The ocean of love. The ocean of peace. The ocean of everything. And yet just a pure point of consciousness. And I, the sun, am a child of this ocean. And as I stand in God's presence, I let myself be embraced. And I receive grace. Life is beautiful. And I am beautiful. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Thank you.
Thank you so much once again.
Thank you. That was wonderful.
Wonderful.
Thank you. See you again.
Lovely to see all the old faces. Om Shanti, good night, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you may be.